Hello, everybody. We should be recording. I'm just double checking that. Yes. Okay. So this is the video for Lab 10. So if we open up Lab 10, we will see this. And so this lab has to do with arrays. So you should watch the first video from the lecture this week, which covers arrays. And yeah, we will go ahead and get started. So let's see if we have Eclipse open. We do. And we've got several problems in here. Now, if you look at the bottom here, it says submit your Java files to Canvas. It suggests like problem 4 to go into one file. Problem 3 could go into another file. Problem 2 could go into another file. Problem 1 could go into another file. You don't actually have to do that. I'm going to do these all in one file. So let's go ahead and get started by going back to Eclipse and creating a Lab 10. So we'll go File, New Java Project, Lab 10. Open that up. Click on Source, New Class, Lab 10. We'll create a public static void main, and there we go. So let's see what we have. So it says problem 1, write a Java program called blah, 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 with the following code in your main method, and it says print the second, fourth, and sixth values to the console. So we have this array. So what we should know is that this is a perfectly okay way to declare an array. And all we're supposed to be doing is we're supposed to be printing some of these values to the console. So it says sample output, second, fourth, and sixth values, second, fourth, and sixth values. So if we just copy kind of that and we want to print second value, and then all we really need to add here is the second entry of the array. So to get the second entry from the array, it's the name of the array, in this case, my array, and the appropriate index. And the only real purpose of this part is that to know that the indices start at 0. So like the 99 here is index 0, and the 98 is index 1, and the 97 is index 2, and so on through the array. So if we're trying to print the second value is at index 1, and that's really the only real point. So when I run this, we get that the second value is 98. Maybe I want to put a space there. Second value 98, just like it says here, second value 98. And we want to continue that on. So we have to do 2 more of these. One for the what value? Let's see, fourth value and sixth value. So let's just change this to say fourth and sixth. And just like the second value was index 1, the fourth value should be index 3, and the sixth value should be index 5. And so the index that goes into the array is going to be one different than what entry it is. So like the sixth value is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's 94, but the index is 5. So entry 6 has index 5. That's kind of the point. So when we run this, we get 98, 96, and 94, just like it says here, 98, 96, and 94. Cool. That is problem 1. So I said we were going to put these all into one file, but now that I did this, I realized that we can't really, because the name of the array was the same as this array. So if we wanted to do it in the same problem, I would have to copy this, but maybe we'll start problem 2 here. We can't call it my array. We're going to get an error. We'd have to change the name of it. We'll say my array 2 so I can put it in the same file. What are we doing with this array? It says write a for loop that will print the values in my array to the console. And so if you go back home and we look at the week 10 page and we look at the arrays here, PDF, we open that up. And in this set of lecture slides that we had, we will find code to basically loop through an array. And there's code here that will basically show us how to do it. I'll type it up, but you can get that code from this set of lecture slides. So back here, the way to loop through an array is you start a variable index, I'll call it I, started at 0. We want to go while that index is less than the array length. So that's my array 2, right? Because this one's called my array 2 dot length semicolon, and then I plus plus. That will make the index start at 0 and go to the array length, actually the array length minus 1. Then what do we need to do in this array? Well, we're supposed to be, let's go back over to the lab. We are supposed to be just printing the values into the console. And this is an example. So if I do system.out.println, for example, and then if I try to print my array 2 subscript I, then that will basically do it, but it's not the format that it says. So you see that what happens is it prints these numbers 7, -6, 5, -4, 3, -2, 1, 0 out to the console, but they're vertically instead of horizontally. So we can fix that by deleting the print or deleting the ln from the print. So it's just regular print. If you did that, now they would be horizontal, but there's no kind of spacing or anything, so it looks really weird. So what you can do is after you print the thing, you could print a comma and a space. That will improve the output quite a bit, as you can see. And you don't have to do this. Like this right here, this is perfectly fine for problem 2. But you can see that it's not great, right? Like this has a comma on the end. Also, there's no curly brace, or not curly brace. There's no square bracket at the beginning. And that's intentional. If you want to make your output look a little nicer, you see that printing it in the for loop like this just doesn't make it look super awesome. You can sort of fix that. How would you do it? Well, what you'd have to do is you could print a square bracket at the beginning, right? If you print the square bracket at the beginning, you'll have a square bracket at the beginning. And you could say, well, then we can print a square bracket at the end. So we'll do the same thing after the for loop. Now you have a square bracket at the end. That's pretty close to what we have here. You'll also notice that this has an extra comma and a space that we don't want. And fixing that actually is where you say, oh, well, actually, the for loop is responsible for printing all those commas and spaces. So if you don't want to print the comma and the space, or what you could do is let's delete the comma and the space here. Now they're all running together again, which is bad. If we added system.out.print, that's not what I wanted, and I added comma space, right? Then we're going to get them back. that will add our comma and space back. We got a problem here? No, it's fine. But we still have the extra one at the end. And so you might say like, well, why did you bother separating them if we didn't actually fix anything? Well, what you can do is you can add an if statement. You can just say that if the I value is not equal to my array to length minus 1, then we're going to print a comma and a space. So that's a little bit complicated looking, right, to add that code. But what that's going to do is as long as the I is not the length minus 1, then we print the comma in the space. So if the I does equal the length minus 1, we're not going to print the comma in the space. So notice what it's going to do to the end here. Delete them. So do you have to do all this stuff in your problem too? No, you don't. But if you wanted to try to make it look exactly like the output, you kind of do. So we needed to only print the comma spaces in certain situation. Another way to do it would be to not have the if statement. So we're back to printing the extra comma space at the end. And then in order to fix it, what you could do is change the length on the for loop to be minus 1, length minus 1. Now what'll happen is we're going to lose the 0, the comma, and the space. We're going to lose the entire last entry. So let's see that. You see, there's no 0, comma, space at the end now. And then what you can do in your very last print statement is we could print the last entry of the array. So we could do my array2, and then we need the length of the array, my array dot length minus 1. That's a big thing to put inside of the square brackets, but we can do it. And then the square bracket. So that should fill in the last 0. Oh, we got a problem. Index 9 out of, oh, my array should be my array 2. I forgot we changed all the name of the array. All right, there we go. So now you get it back in that way. So you can make your loop just stop one element early and then just special case to print the last entry of the array and the square bracket. That's another way to fix it. Regardless, optional, but that's what we did. And now we could do problem 3. So what's problem 3? So problem 3 has another my array. Actually, looking at this one, this looks like the same exact my array as the my array up here. So we don't really need a new one. If you want to, maybe we'll just do this. We'll put my array and we'll call it my array 3. So my array 3 for problem 3, even though it's the same as my array 2. What are we supposed to do? Write a for loop that loops through the values in my array and sets the negative values to 0 and then output them. How do we do that? Well, so this involves looping through the array. So you take your code that loops through the array. Maybe we'll just take the code from the last problem and we'll put it here, right? So if I just do this, right now, I'll change it to my array 3 everywhere. Then we're going to get, gross code. I guess we should also change this one up here to a print line so that this goes on to the next line. So we're printing my array 3. Let's go ahead and this one doesn't say how to do it. So I'm just going to print a space at the end of every entry. So we'll separate them by spaces. We won't put commas. The nice thing about putting spaces and not commas is that you can't really see that there's an extra space at the end, right? If there was a comma at the end, you'd see it, but with a space, you don't really see it. Um, okay, so we're printing out the array in myArray3. That's one of the things it says to do, but it says the for loop should loop through the values in myArray and set the values that are negative to 0 and then print them out. So that's not as bad as it seems. Also, I see another problem here, which is if we are going to have to kind of, not have to, but if we want to put the square brackets at the beginning and the end, like we did before, then, I changed the structure of this for loop, but maybe let's not do that. Let's actually copy everything from problem 2 and replace it here, and then just change all the 2's to 3's on the arrays. So what this will do is hopefully print out the array twice. Okay, cool. But what we still have not done for problem 3 is that we should loop through the values in my array and set the values that are negative to 0. So all you have to do for that is in your loop, before you print out the values, actually, before you print out the values, which happens here, we should just check if they're negative. So if the value is negative, so that would be if my array 3 subscript I, if it's less than 0, then what are we supposed to do if it's negative? It says if they're negative, we should set them to 0. So like in the original, right, there's a -6 and a -4 and a -2. And on the output, there's 0 and then 0 and then 0 for those. So what you do is if the entry in the array is negative, then we should set it to 0. So we would set my array 3I equal 0. So hopefully we can understand this, right? So if the current entry in the array is less than 0, make it 0. So we haven't run this yet, but what we'll see is in the second time it prints this array, it's going to replace those negative numbers with zeros. There they go. Now they're not lined up vertically because the negative signs take up spaces, but you can at least see the -6 was replaced with 0, the -4 was replaced with 0, and the -2 is replaced with 0. Cool. So that's problem 3. What's problem 4? Problem 4. So what you have to do for problem 4 here is it says declare an array of 16 integers without filling in the values. Okay. So that would be like int subscript. I think I have to pause it right here. I'll be back in a minute. Hopefully no time will pass for you. All right, I'm back. So what were we doing? So it said declare an array of 16 integers without filling in the values. Cool. So we can call it whatever we want. Again, they call it my array here. I'll call mine my array 4. And if we want 16 entries, you would say new int, and then in square brackets, you put the number of entries you want. So this is empty array. I shouldn't say empty. Uh, array with 16 zeros. You get zeros when you use new int. Okay, so there we are. 16 entries. Now what? Uh, fills out the array with the numbers 25 through 40 using a for loop. Yeah, so fill out the array with numbers 25 through 40 using a for loop. So do we need to print it? It doesn't say so. So how about this? For Now, there's a variety of ways to do this. You could say like int j equals 0, j less than my array dot length j plus plus. I'm just using j instead of I. I don't know, just to be different than the previous example, I guess. So this is a normal for loop that's going to start at 0 and go to however long the array is. Now, the thing that's not really mentioned here is that if you take the indices here, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, right? Those are the indices. I'll say index here. And then the values that we want to put in are, what did it say? 25 through 40. So hopefully that matches up, right? Like this should be 25, and then the next one should be 26, and then the next one should be 27, and the next one should be 28. Going to space these out to make that sort of work out without me having to redo it every time. Okay, so then we have 29, 30, 31, 32, 3, 4, 5, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40. Okay, so what we've got is a loop that's starting at 0 and going to up to 15 actually. And so you can access the appropriate entry from the array with uh, my array 4, and then subscript j, right? So that's going to first fill in my array 0, my array 1, my array 2, all the way up to 15. Now the values are supposed to be 25 through 40. Now, how are you going to get 25 through 40? There's a lot of ways. So um, here's one way. So one way would be to say, well, if you filled it in with j like this, then that would put a 0 into entry 0 and a 1 into entry 1 and a 2 into entry 2 all the way up to a 15 into entry 15, right? That's not what you want. But if you added 25, now you would be adding 0 plus 25 into entry 0. So that would be a 25 into entry 0. And then when j is 1, it would be my array 1 equals 1 plus 25, which would be 26. So we'd end up with a 26 in entry 1. When j is 2, this would be my array 2 equals 2 plus 25. That'd be 27. So into entry 2, you'd have a 27. So that's one way to do it. So it doesn't say to print them out or anything afterwards, right? So it just says fill some out. So we don't have to print anything. So we're not going to actually visualize this, but this would work. This would work. If you wanted to just double check that it's working, we can just print my array j after we fill it in just to make sure we're getting the right values. So like, just to show you, if I just did my array j equals j, and then we printed it, we end up with the numbers, oh, sorry, my array 4. I forgot that we called it my array 4 again. So then we end up with the numbers 0. Oh, also my array 4, this would have to be my array 4. I forgot in multiple places. So, okay, now we end up with 0 through 15, right? If you did my array for j equals j. And, if you added 25 to that, as we said, that should work. You'll see now that the values are 25 up through 40. Cool. So that works perfectly fine. There were other ways to do this, though. So you can look at this and hopefully that makes sense. If this was confusing to you, you could have just made a separate counter. You could have just said int, I don't know, uh, you know, val equals 25 or something like that. So you could have just started a number at 25 and then you would just put the value in there. But if you did that just with 25, of course, now they're all going to be 25s. So you don't want to fill them all with 25s. You want to add one every time through. So you could do that this way, val plus plus. Now you would get 25 through 40. Or you don't have to have separate lines here. The thing about val plus plus is that if you put val plus plus there, it'll use the value first to go into the array, and then afterwards, the plus plus will add 1 to it. So this would also work. So you see we get 25 up to 40 this way. Another way to do it would be, let's just delete this here. You could have used your for loop. Now remember how we said when we were talking about loops that you could actually put a lot of different things in the initialization, a lot of different things in the condition, and a lot of different things in the iteration. Well, for example, you can add an extra thing here. So this says int j equals 0. You could have just said and int val equals 25. Do both of these things here. You can separate them with a comma. Then over at the end, we don't just want j to add, we don't want to just add 1 to j. We could also add 1 to val. And then in here, it just has to be my array j equals val. And do we have a problem? We have a problem. What's the problem? Delete on line 44. I can't have int val. Why can't I have int val? Did we previously use val? Was that a variable that existed? It must have been. Okay, so I deleted the int in front of the val to fix this. Where did we have val earlier? We must have used it. We did? Uh, val? Val, 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 val. Huh. Okay. Well, I don't see it, but it works this way. So in any case, there were multiple ways of doing this, and you actually couldn't really tell if you were doing it correctly unless you added an extra line like I did in order to, spit out the values in the array to the console. Um, so, when that's done, you can delete that, although you don't have to. I'm just going to look to see that you have something that should fill in these values, and I'll just guess at whether or not it produced the correct output, essentially. All right, so that was problem 4. We filled out an array with the numbers 25 through 40. And this kind of thing where I kind of looked at the numbers before I set out to write the for loop, I mean, that's really the only way to think your way through a problem like this, right? You don't know, like, 0 through 15 because there's 16 entries, and I said 25 through 40, but did you just trust that 25 through 40 was 16 numbers, right? Is that the right number of numbers? Um, I wrote them next to each other here and we could tell. All right. So anyway, we did problems 1 through 4 here, and we just need to submit this, which I'm not going to show you, but it just says submit your answers as Java files. So this does not say to screenshot it. So just submit the Java files and you're fine. If you do submit screenshots, that's also okay. All right, that's it for now. Talk to you guys later.